Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to PreZense, the power of awareness and faith. PreZense, I like to jokingly say, it's how you show up when you show up. And I think that's very apropos. Just so you know, and I know there's a lot of reticence about this with some of the self-help sort of seminars. I'm not here to fix you. I don't know your answer. I don't know where you're at with your journey. I'm going to share a bunch of ideas, and with the hope that some of it resonates with you and some of it helps you in some way. And it's open format, so in other words, you can interrupt me anytime. Not going to hurt my feelings. I don't like listening to myself drone on either, so feel free to ask questions. We're going to participate where we can. We got some videos and stuff like that. So, shall we? What comes to mind for you when you hear the word resilience? Anybody?
A brick wall.
What's that?
A brick wall.
A brick wall. I think of resistance more of that, but resilience. Yes. Yeah, it's a great description. Other things that come to mind? So if you look it up in the dictionary, hi Charini, good morning. If you look up in the dictionary, you'll see that resilience means the ability to successfully adapt to stressors, maintaining psychological well-being in the face of adversity. And it's the ability to withstand, recover, and persevere through difficult experiences, right? How many of you are really good at this? So the opportunity for everyone at every walk of life is to get a little better at this. This is, like asking the shaman or the monk, how good are they at meditating? They're going to say, well, there's always opportunity. And there is always opportunity to grow in resilience. And like the Japanese proverb says, the bamboo that bends is stronger than the oak that resists. And we're going to go there. So the fascinating thing about resilience that most of you probably haven't really thought about is it's a learned trait, which is very unusual because many of the traits we're born with kind of have this default sense of belief around many things. We'll talk about where beliefs come later, but it's one that you can work on and it's one you can change. So from that point of view, resilience is a powerful tool, and it's part of, I hate to do Maslow, but I like to do him sometimes because he's helpful. Who's familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Okay, everybody remembers what the top one is, right? What is it? Self-actualization, very good. Do you remember the one below it?
No.
Okay, so the one below it is esteem, and it turns out self-reliance, resilience, actually falls in the esteem category. And so it's one below self-actualization. So in other words, to be full self-actualized, Maslow would argue that you need to learn resilience first. So in some ways, this first section that we're talking about today is going to set the stage for all the rest because it lays the foundation for all the rest. And resilience, therefore, or the esteem level at Maslow would be things like confidence, reputation, recognition, competence. Those all feed into resilience. Good stuff, right? Okay, keep going. So Dr. Ken Ginsberg does this little catchy thing where he talks about the psychology of resilience. But before I get there, I pulled a bunch of quotes to get something I really liked for this slide, and I love Harry Truman's quote because it really gets to the point of things. When you're looking at great men, he found that the first victory they won was over themselves. For self-discipline with all of them came first. And that ties in very well with what I was just talking about when I was talking about Maslow. Because self-discipline becomes essential once you get through the basic things that Maslow talks about, which are you got to have, food, physical needs, food, water, etc. You got to have safety. You got to have love and belonging. And then here's esteem. So Truman's basically arguing that unless you start working on esteem, it's very hard to get to self-actualization, and then there's something Maslow worked on later, self-transcendence, which we'll talk about separately. So Ginsberg, you know how these psychologists like to do, they try to make it catchy. So here's the 7 C's of resilience. He said you have to be competent, able to do something. You have to feel like you have agency, control. You have to be able to feel like you can cope with adversity. You have to have character, specifically, and you can see that this is in a different color here, strong sense of morality, ethics, and values. It's kind of a lilac color, maybe a little hard to see. You got to get a sense that you're contributing, and I don't expect you to write all these down. They're actually in the slides if you didn't get handouts. You have to get a sense, it helps if you have a sense of connection with your community and a confidence. Now, I colored these about halfway through. You'll see the color changes to purple. That's because while he did his 7 season, that's all exciting, it's awkward to hold on to. It's easier to look at this and say, well, what is he really saying the 2 fundamental traits are? Can anyone take a guess at what the 1 trait in light gray is and the 1 trait is in purple that you kind of have to make this work? Or said another way, the bottom 3 are one and the top 3 are another and the middle one's split. For those of you who are color impaired or at the wrong angle because these lights aren't helping. What do you see? What's light gray? You got to have what? To be competent, to feel in control, to be able to cope, and to have a strong character, you need to have confidence. Yeah. And the confidence comes from doing what? Comes from discipline. All those are a result of direct action you take. And the last ones are all a result of your willingness to believe in good. You can have faith in God, you can have faith in yourself, you can have faith in the outcome, but you have to have faith. So I can boil all resiliency down to 2 words, discipline and faith. And that's where we're going this week. Discipline and faith. Discipline. And again, I'm trying to set the foundation so we can work up. Gandhi says, live life as if you were to die tomorrow, but learn as if you were to live forever. And all the people here today are to be complimented because you're here trying to learn. So welcome. The challenge I have for you is, how are you going through life? Because you want to be resilient. It actually comes down to one of the most basic behaviors we have as humans. Are you proactive or are you reactive? Wow, Russ, you're going right for the jugular. Anyone in here procrastinate? I would guess about 80% of the students when I taught UB procrastinated. That's not like a great thing because there's some things that happen when you're reactive in life versus proactive. I know, you didn't think I was going right for you early, but I am. Because if you're going to have resilience, you kind of have to be in charge of you. And what you don't want to do is you don't want to get in a situation where you're allowing things only to get done in your life when they become important or essential or critical. But that's how a reactive person will go through life. Until it's a problem, why should I worry about it? So planning is rare, procrastination is more normal, and this is the problem. It creates stress. Because you've invited stress to make your decisions for you, it diminishes outcome, and it gives your control up. Because you could have controlled the situation, but you chose to let your control go. And that's going to matter a bunch in a second. I'm going to talk about why. Anyone ever heard the term hyperbolic discounting? Anyone been to my prior seminar? Do you remember it? All right. So it's a psychological term, and it's very simple. It means that we see things today as being more valuable than they actually are. And we see things in the future as being less valuable than they actually are. So where do we see this in society? Diet, exercise, personal savings rates, all hyperbolic discounting behaviors. Not going to the doctor, things that are proactive that you could have planned against that you don't do. And those are simple examples, but we see it all through society. I'm not saying it's bad, but if you want to be resilient, you have an opportunity to own that part of your life. Versus a proactive life, which is one of control. Because choice is a form of power. So hear me out. How do these two resonate for you? You're on a diet, you're in a coffee shop with a friend, and someone orders you pastry and gives it to you, and you're in a tight spot because this is going to blow your calories for yesterday, which you already blew, or whatever. What's the typical reaction? I can't eat that, right? I can't eat that. But what if you said, I choose not to eat that? Does anyone feel the shift? Or I have to do this versus I get to do this. Or we can't afford that, but instead of I choose to spend my money this way. What happened in all three of those? Pat? Yeah. I chose to look at it in a way that supported me making the decision instead of me being a victim of the decision. Welcome to the most fundamental form of control. It starts with the basic framing and how you think through things. And then it grows into other things that we'll talk about. Now, perceived control, I can't express enough how much procrastination actually hurts people other than to use a science experiment. So they had rats, and they injected them with cancer cells. And the control group got 50% cancer. Poor rats. Then they took another group, and they gave them cancer cells. But they exposed them to these environmental stresses, which were electrical shocks. So there was more stress in their environment. Did more or fewer rats get cancer? More. 50% more got cancer, about 75%. Then they did it a third time. They gave rats injections, exposed them to the same stressor, but this set of rats was able to figure out how to shut the electrical current off. They turned a wheel, they pushed a button, they turned a lever. They developed agency, ability to control their environment. The control group got 50% cancer. What happened with this group that had agency, that had control?
Probably got less.
Yeah. Their cancer rate dropped by 50%. That's how important control is for your well-being. So when I talk about control, I'm not talking about it like, oh, proactive is the way to be. I'm talking about proactive actually changes your entire environment of your life. It changes your well-being in a very fundamental way. And it's actually similar when you think about life goals. Now, anyone in here have a written life goal besides me? In the normal population, 80% of people will have no goals. That's perfectly normal. Then 16% of people have goals, but they won't have them written down. But here's the interesting part. What percent of the 16% accomplish their goals? 50, flip of a coin, right? I love it. That's like exactly what you'd expect. But then there's this 2 to 4% that write down their goals. They achieve them 76% of the time. But there's another group that writes down their goals, tracks their progress against their goals, and shares their goals with someone else as an accountability partner. Does anyone want to guess what their?
Probably 100%.
95. 95. So what is it you want in life? Have you written it down? Put a date against it? That's a seminar for another day. But I'm making the point about proactive and reactive because of the power behind it. So there's three components I think of when I think of being disciplined. I think of direction. We just talked about plans. I think about action. Got to do that. And then there's the whole perseverance piece, that stickiness you have. So let's bang through those. Action. Action is essential for personal development. One of my favorite quotes of all time is by Hugh Laurie. It's a terrible thing, I think, in life to wait until you're ready. There's this feeling that actually no one's ever ready to do anything. There's almost no such thing as ready. There's only now, and you might as well do it now, because generally speaking, now is as good a time as any. Amen, brother. Proactive and, willing to put it out there. Look, the reality is, unless you're taking action towards something in life, you can't change the direction of your life. You can't steer a car that isn't moving. You have to be moving in order to do any sort of self-direction. And it's even a little worse than that. You guys all know the lazy rivers you go to, sometimes in amusement parks. You sort of tell the water's flowing, but sometimes you can't. Really a great metaphor for life. Because if you're not paddling, what's happening? You're going behind, you're losing ground, right? I mean, there's some certain amount of action that's needed just to hold your own in life. You see it all around us with the way things are changing and they're evolving. So some paddling is needed. And if you want to get ahead, you actually have to paddle. Paddle. So from that perspective, I think that's powerful. And of course, there's the whole running water gives life and stagnant water doesn't conversation. Now, here's a really interesting conversation. There's been a bunch of studies around this. Describe helplessness. Anybody in this room? I think it's just an interesting word, helplessness. You are unable to help yourself, right? You are out of help for you. And that often is linked with inaction, right? Because you don't think that anything you do will make a difference, right? Does anyone want to guess what the rate of depression is with people who feel helpless or, yeah, it's high. It's double the standard control groups, at least double. So it's a big deal, right? Rumination, what does the word mean? Anyone? Anyone study Latin? You older? Yeah, ruminate, to chew again, actually is the literal translation from the Latin. So cows take the food out of their stomach and they chew it again. So this looks like this. He did me wrong. She did me wrong. I can't believe she did me wrong. I'm going to spend the next hour thinking about how she did me wrong. I'm going to call two friends. We're going to meet. We're going to have lunch. We're going to talk about how she did me wrong. Then I'm going to call my mom. Then I'm going to read books about how she did me wrong. Then I'm going to journal about how she did me wrong. I'm going to see my therapist how she did me wrong. And 6 months from now, I'm going to still be talking about how she did me wrong. Right? That's rumination. Now, if that sounded strikingly familiar to anyone in this room, just keep looking at me. Don't look at the person to your left. Don't look to your right. Make any notes. Yeah. So that is hey, Ben, that is a perfectly wonderful way to skyrocket your rates of depression. Why? What is the link between action and depression here? Anybody? Lack of action causes depression. And I love that Wes said lack of. Because what Wes is actually saying, and he probably doesn't know he's saying it, is that any action, and this is actually proven out, any action is better than no action. Even what I would call distraction. Distraction, action, distracted action. And so they did studies back in the day, and they found that, for example, the husband who got upset and quit his job and punched a hole in the wall, and or someone who broke up a relationship, or any sort of action, even if it wasn't productive action, tended to create value in their lives. It tended to keep them from getting depression. So there's something valuable about being distracted that's powerful. And you'll see this in a statistic which I think is very interesting. But before we get there, the way around this is actually very simple. And Nate talked about it in his service today. The question is very simple. What one thing? So I'll put it out to all of you. And actually, feel free to write it down in your little note card next to this slide here. What one thing, if you did it today, would make the biggest difference in your life? The thing that would move you furthest to the goal or the thing you want? What one thing? What one thing? This is the most fundamental way to take action. You don't need a life plan. You have to ask yourself what one thing. And then, of course, the trick is, go do that first. Do it first. Make that your thing for the day. Because you've seen your lighthouse, whatever it is you want to accomplish, and you know the one thing that's going to get you there. And if you need permission, this is your permission slip. Was that thing you want to do, that you know you want to do, that you've had in your heart to do for some time, you just haven't done? Hugh Laurie would say, do it today. And I would say, do it now. So, regrets of the elderly. There's been a lot of studies. The Nightingale studies, the most impactful of all of them, the ones often quoted. At the end of life, what is it people regret the most?
Spending more time with family.
Yeah, okay. Those are, yeah. And Wes, again, I like this, Wes. This is very good. The biggest regrets they have are almost never their failures. Failures don't even show up in the top few. It's never things they did that didn't work out. It turns out that trying something and failing at it actually doesn't leave you feeling bad about it because you tried. The real problem is when you have something you want to do and you don't ever try. And that actually ends up being 2/3 of the regrets of elderly people. 2/3 of death will be things you always wanted to do that you didn't do. Now, there are subcategories to that. One of them is, the number one thing is that you didn't live your life the way you wanted to live it. You lived the way society told you to live it, or the way someone you thought you should live it. That's the number one regret. And then right behind that is education. Going to school, getting a degree, doing that. It tends to be a really big one because there's a regret that's very hard to unwind later in life. So, when would now be a good time to do that thing? because fear and worry come on all of us. But it turns out the secret is to start anyway. Booker T. Washington has a quote I absolutely love. Success is to be measured not so much by the position that one has reached in life as the obstacles one has overcome. Wow. Yeah. So we're going to have these challenges, and it's going to start with our ability to start taking action. And the key, of course, is for us to build some emotional capability and flexibility. But this is what I can't stress enough. If you don't do the thing you always want to do, what does that create for you? Sadness, maybe a little worry you're missing out, a little stress. And what is starting something new that you don't know how it's going to work out? That creates a little angst and worry and stress. So what I'm offering you is the only option forward. You're going to have stress or worry either way. Whether you don't do the thing you want to do and you stay where you're at, or if you lean into the thing you want to do. Because fear and stress are always the result of staying stuck. And you get in that what-if loop. The secret, of course, in life is to not abandon yourselves. And I'm going to come back a lot later on with what I mean by yourself. Because there's kind of this made-up self we have of ourselves, and there's kind of our spirit, and there is our spirit inside. And what we want to avoid doing is shutting down who we are, lashing out, or abandoning our true selves. Because if we stay where we're at, we leave ourselves small and trapped in many regards. So the idea is to proceed either way with a centered presence. Because the life you crave, the confidence you admire, the peace you seek, they do await you. They do. Discover you are bigger than your fears. Welcome to resilience. You see, fear is actually a made-up construct. We're going to talk about in the next slide. And we think it's real. We think it's the end. Turns out, not so much. The trick, of course, by starting, even if you fail, even if you don't know how it's going to work out, the trick by starting is that, here, you get stronger. It's just like a muscle. And if you start 20 times, you've done 20 reps. The key is to keep starting. So which wins out? I know some really, really smart people, like scary genius smart people. And I have to ask you, which tends to prevail, tenacity or intelligence? Oh, everyone seemed to know the answer. Yeah. If you have intelligence without drive, it's just a smart book sitting in the library. That's all it is. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, the person you are destined to become is the person you decided to be. So what are you doing to get you there? Because things always work out. Here we go. This is the test. We're going to do the worst day proof in a second. When you get a situation and you call it a failure, where did the decision to make that a failure come from? To even name it a failure. There's nothing inherently failure-ish about the outcome. You just decided that it wasn't what you expected or wasn't what you wanted. Instead of saying, that's neither here nor there, that's just feedback, it's just data. So part of the process we're going to get into in the upcoming weeks is standing in a place where we can embrace different outcomes and our expectations and not call them failure, call them information. And then from that place have a lot more power to move forward instead of being crumpled a little bit under that outcome. So worst day proof. Sorry, I'm going to dredge up some memories. I want each of you to think of the worst day in your lives. Worst day. Now, I have a magic wand. I can make your worst day go away. But like all genie wands, this one has a catch. You're not going to be who you are today. Literally and figuratively. Your life will have taken a very different path. We don't know what it looks like. How many of you want to give, by show of hands, want to get rid of your worst day still? That's about the same statistic I see. I see about 5% of people still want to get rid of it and 95% don't. That's about normal. Why do the 95% of you not want to get rid of that day? Why? To get rid of the day? Get rid of- Okay. Yeah, it's unknown. Isn't there some value in adversity?
We're happy where we're at. Or
Yeah. Wasn't there some value in it? I mean, no one likes the event or the day, but didn't it in some way change who you are? Didn't it serve you? Didn't you learn through it? Yeah, that's what I think we're all responding to. And that's really powerful because this is why it's really powerful. If you wouldn't get rid of the worst day in your life, what is it you're afraid to go do? I'll say it again. If you wouldn't get rid of the worst day in your life, what is it you're afraid to go do? Exactly. Real failure is impossible. As a matter of fact, I tell my kids all the time, they hate when I say it. If you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough. So this trip got messed up, this got messed up, this got whatever. You're not failing, you're not trying hard enough. I hope you have failures all the time. It means you're pushing the envelope of life. Good for you. And then we lean from perseverance into the faith piece, because you have to stand in a place where you're not helpless or hopeless, where you're actually expecting good things. Do expectations matter? Great studies in the 70s about students who were intellectual bloomers. Teachers were told these students are intellectual bloomers. At the end of the year, the tests were given out, and those students were intellectual bloomers, which were, of course, selected at random, did 47% better on the test versus 19% of the group that didn't have the label intellectual bloomers. How is that possible? Anybody, how's that possible? Yeah.
They rose to the expectation.
You would think, right? And the researchers thought the same thing, that maybe the teachers kind of told the kids, and the kids rose. So they repeated the experiment with rats, because you can't talk to a rat, presumably, and got exactly the same results. The expectations of the researchers influence the data set. It's really important. Your expectations are going to influence your outcomes. You're not even going to know it's happening. It's going to happen behind the scenes, but it's shown again and again and again. What do we call this in medicine? Placebo effect. Yeah. What do we call it in quantum physics? Every science has a name for it: spirituality, psychology, philosophy, quantum. The ability to influence outcome by expecting the outcome. So your expectations matter a lot, because your very beliefs influence not only what you do, but how you respond, and of course, what happens. So the real blessing for each of you, take this nugget with you today, is it's not what happened to you, it's how. Why did that happen for me? Why did that happen for me? What's my next best move based on that? Because faith matters. Faith, the power to move mountains. All right. On your little piece of paper, next to this slide, write the number of things you think you worry about in a given week. Just take a guess. Yeah, you can use zeros, Wes. You don't need another piece of paper. Round off, right? What do you guys think that number is? Anyone want to take a guess? In a week. Okay, you can do a day, Brian. I mean, you want to get a number you can put down on paper. What do you think that number is for you guys? 50, there you go. Yeah, probably for me it's not a huge number, it's the same one over and over again, which is annoying. Probably more annoying than having a high number. Anyone else want to throw out a number? I'm not convicting anyone. All right, well, we heard 50. Here's the trick, and this is the challenge with faith. You can tell the size of your God by looking at the size of your worry list. The longer your list, the smaller your God. And why are we worried? Because we're relying on who for those things? Ourselves. And we're going to spend lots of fun the next couple weeks talking about how our cells hijacked our well-being in life, and how right-sizing how we look at ourselves serves us for a wide range of reasons, including more love, more joy, more peace in our lives. And that's the crux of this conversation Nate and I had, which was on resilience, and quickly got to, well, you can't have it unless you have this conversation about how you get in your own way thinking-wise. And hence, 1 week becomes 8. The good news is you're going the whole way, because we've got some great, insightful answers for you on the way. So, difference between hope and faith. What's the difference between hope and faith? I know they're two different ladies, but what's the difference between hope and faith?
One is confident, if you're confident in faith, hope is hoping or...
Yeah. So wishing, right? Yeah, so you got wishing versus confidence. He's spot on. Now, ironically, in the old days, the word hope is evolved in our current culture. It used to actually mean the same thing as faith. Now it means wishing, which is a different piece. So we've got to be careful with that translation. But hope and faith. Hope is wishing, faith is knowing. Why does it matter? Didn't we just talk about how beliefs influence outcomes? Right, we did. Now, this is very interesting for me, because belief works in either direction. Anyone know Henry Ford's famous quote, one of my favorites? Whether you think you can or you think you can't, either way you're right. Because faith works in either direction. Does the Bible support this? Does the Bible say if we think of negative things, they're going to come on us? Oh, yeah. Oh, it certainly does. Matter of fact, it says if we don't believe in God, then the other things we wish upon ourselves are not going to happen. Because positive and negative consequences are equally powerful. I hate this bullet point. I kept wanting to rewrite it because I know psychologists have studied again and again that negative is always more powerful than positive. We are way more adverse to a loss than we are to the equivalent gain. The emotional cost to us is much higher. So I would actually suspect that negative beliefs are more powerful than positive beliefs, even more reason not to have them around. Welcome to week 2. The promise is that your belief will come upon you, as Job reminds us. So that then makes me think, well, God knew this was an issue, so he might have baked it into a document we look at every now and then. Turns out he did bake it in. 85 to 115 times, depending on translation, this command is in the Bible in some form or another. Does anyone want to guess what it is? It's the most uttered command in the whole Bible. Fear not. 85 to 115 times. Why? Fear not. Some version of fear not, don't worry, don't be afraid. It's the most uttered command in the Bible. Why? Do you think maybe God was onto something? That if we started with fear, it was going to cost us the rest of the process? Yeah, it's a big deal. Worry is a practice in atheism. I didn't know I was converting, but evidently I've been spending a lot of time working on my new faith. The trick, of course, is to find that place of peace where we can rest in God. And this is that biblical truth, live like a child. It doesn't mean live simple. It means open and trusting. That's what that confidence, peace means. So the question I have for all of you is your faith on or off God? Here's the thing, it's on one or the other. Who in here, you Bible aficionados, knows the story about money? Is money evil? No. What's the problem with money? It's when you love it. Because wherever your heart is, therefore also is your focus, your time, your money, right? Oh, money, that's the case. Yeah, so it's not, there's nothing wrong with money. Well, it's true with everything. The heart is going to seek its treasure. And if your heart is worldly, you're going to go after worldly things. And if your heart is money, you're going after money things. And if your heart's about you, which inadvertently, the story we tell ourselves of ourselves is a really big consumer of our bandwidth, as we will talk in future sessions, that leaves very little space for God to be on the throne in our lives. So we get these long worry lists, and we get a lot of fear, we get a lot of worry, because we're trying to solve all our problems. We're not doing a lot of flowing. And I'm not saying you shouldn't take action. You should. I'm not saying you shouldn't have goals or direction in your life or things you're working for. You should do those things. God doesn't want us sitting around doing nothing. I'm pretty certain. At least he doesn't want me. But the reality is there's this space for open outcomes. There's this space for allowing serendipity. There's this space for being present where no matter the outcome, you can be at peace with it. You can walk in love. Right? Because the heart seeks its treasure. God's not coming. So I showed all my slides to Nate before this seminar, and this was the one I thought for sure he was going to hunt me down, but he was good about it because he let me finish the thought. God's not coming. Why is God not coming? He's already here. God's here. He never left. Let me ask you this. Is God all-knowing, all-seeing, omnipotent, omnipresent, everywhere all the time? Did he not promise that he would always be with us, never leave us, never forsake us, not be dismayed? For he is God, he'll strengthen us, and he will uphold us. To merge 3 different verses together because it gets the point. Right? Yeah. So he's a little too big to hide, wouldn't you think? Especially if this is like people are talking about now, this is all a simulation. Wouldn't that be interesting? I mean, we're just the marble sitting on his desk. He's not going anywhere. Let me ask you this. See this area in this room? When they made this room, did all of space become smaller because of this room? No, right? Just because we put walls up didn't shrink the size of outer space. And 100 years from now, when this building comes tumbling down, is this space going to magically reunite with outer space? No. It's always been connected. When you were created, when you were born, did you magically separate yourself from God? Do you think you walk without his presence? Do you think, yeah. So you can take the analogy the full circle. When you die, you're not going back to God. You've been with him all along. So I'm hoping you're not waiting for him to return before you experience him in your life. Most people have a veil over their understanding. We will come back to this point on several times in different weeks because God can never leave you. He's also told you he won't. I suppose if he really wanted to, but he's told you he won't, so he can't. He doesn't lie. He's one with you. You're always connected. The question is to what extent do you experience God? And this is really where, as Christians, we can kind of get in those, I can get in those places where I'm like, I'm not experiencing God. You know, are you experiencing him once in a while on Sundays? Seems like a little anemic, right? Or are you living in wonder 24/7? So the question I have for you is, what happened to the awe and excitement in life? What happened to that knowing it was going to work out, that excitement, that just spectacular amazement about how the world works and all the good things that are in it? Does anyone want to guess what happened to it? Is it still there, first off? Yeah. Kaylee's nodding her head, yes. Yes, it's still there. You're not noticing it. Why you're not noticing it? Negative thoughts, yeah. More generally, just because of your thoughts, right? We're so stuck on what we want, when we want it, that we get in our own way. So we don't experience as much of that as we like. So resilience, capstone for today's conversation. You have to have discipline, which requires some action, requires ability to start, even though it's scary, some perseverance. Probably doesn't hurt if you have a plan, although as we discussed earlier, you don't have to have a plan, because any action's better than no action, turns out. That's a big deal. Even lousy action turns out to be more productive than sitting around ruminating and whatnot. And then there has to be a piece of expectation that things will work out. You have to have hope. If it's wishing, or you have to have faith, which is confidence, I'm actually pretty okay with anywhere on that spectrum, as long as you believe in the universe is going to work out, or God's going to work it out, or if I work hard, I believe in myself, it's going to work out. Faith is essential. That's key. So I've had the privilege of, thank you, of over 20 years teaching people how to do life planning, how to become self-actualized. I spent a lot of time on that. And the power of doing that is I realize people often set goals that are too specific. There's nothing wrong with wanting $1 million or being CEO. Go do those things if you want to go do them. But when I say push the boulder, how many for you came up in your mind like something specific God asked me to do and I can't think of anything, right? But didn't he just ask you to go and walk in love? Wasn't that all he asked? So that's all you got to go do. Just in every situation, when the guy cuts you off on the road, pull your hand back in from out of the window. You know? Yeah, right. When the screaming's on the television, either find a way to tone yourself down, you can find a neutral stance, or shut it off. When you have an opportunity to serve and make a difference, stop and do it. Be present enough so that you're not caught up in your own whirlwind that you miss opportunities. To listen, to be present, to be aware, to serve. Did you know there's an opportunity every day and every moment to serve? And it's one of the most powerful ways you can serve as a Christian, just even as a human being. Does anyone want to tell me what it is? It's the ultimate act of service. What?
Listen.
Yeah, it is. Listening. Turns out listening is the highest form of service you can give another human being, sans your money, your time, whatnot. And it's something you can do every moment of every day. Because to hear someone is to fully see their humanness. To hear someone is to allow them to be who they are. It's to create relationship. It's to serve, especially if you do the whole 2 ears, 1 mouth rule, where you speak 1/3 of the time and you listen 2/3 of the time based on those ratios. So people often will come to me and we'll talk about this, and I'll say, look, you can serve every day. How are you doing on your service? Well, I don't know how to make the world a better place. Oh, yeah, you do. Who's the next person you're going to run into? What's the next opportunity you have to serve? Now, we have a lot of stuff that gets between us and our ability to do that. We have this worry and this complication and this thing we're trying to get done and this thing and the other thing, and that's where we're going to go next week. And that's going to be the fun of next week, which is to start to get into some of that. How does that resonate with you guys? Pretty interesting, right? Are there any questions at this point? Next week, we're going to do the belief cycle, and we're going to talk about where all those weird little beliefs you have in your head came from. Like, oh, the world's a scary place, and I need to save every old newspaper because it's always lack, there's not enough in the world, or politicians are crooks, or a lot of these basic beliefs that we have, except for some of them that were developed recently, but many of them, scientists think 80 to 95% of them came from our childhoods. And we're going to talk about where they came, how they shape our emotions, our behavior. We're going to talk about our subconscious and how it runs our life if we let it. We're going to talk about deliberately using our creative minds, which is the non-subconscious part, and moving beyond and breaking out of this illusion, which many of us are in, which is our story of ourselves. And that's going to provide us all sorts of interesting self-reflective pieces for next time. Appreciate you all. I'm around. I'll stay after if anyone has any questions, and have some Timbits on the way out. Thank you. See you next week.